What is your message to farmers, many who support you, but who say they're struggling? Who say they're struggling?
Because there's nobody been better to farmers. You know, I gave farmers last term $28 billion because China took advantage and other people.
U.S. farmers are starting to regret their vote for Trump. From beekeepers to soybean to hay producers, all of them are starting to say, I never thought that voting for Trump 3 times would result in me losing tens of thousands of dollars.
Trump loves farmers. Trump will help make American agriculture stronger and stronger. That is what he often said at campaign rallies, and thousands of farmers once believed him. They believed tariffs would protect American products. They believed cracking down on immigration would bring jobs back to Americans. But now they are realizing that campaign slogans cannot sell corn, rice, honey, or soybeans overseas. Tariffs, lost export markets, rising equipment costs, and labor shortages are pushing some family farms to the brink of collapse. MAGA promised an economic bumper crop, but many farmers are now harvesting an incredibly expensive lesson. Today, let us listen to the regret coming straight from MAGA farmers themselves, and witness the nightmare of putting your trust in the wrong place. We will also look at the even worse scenarios that could happen after crop prices fall. Workers disappear, farms go bankrupt, and the land gradually ends up in the hands of major corporations. And in the end, we will find out who these policies are really working for. No one left to harvest, the entire crop is left to rot in the fields. Ask any farmer what nightmare they fear most, and the answer will probably always be a bad harvest. But ask the MAGA farmers in this story, and I can promise you their nightmare is even more bitter. They had a great harvest, but all they can do is leave it rotting in the fields.
This is the consequences when we chose the wrong direction. Oh my God, yes.
There are no scorched, dried-out fields. There are no crops dying all at once. The tomatoes are still red on the vine, and the fruit is still ripening right on schedule, and the potatoes are still packed into the ground. The farmer has made it through nearly every risk of the entire growing year. They are only a few days of work away from getting paid. Then right at that final step, the people who used to bring the crops out of the field suddenly disappear. There's nobody there to harvest them, and the crops cannot wait any longer. You know, fruits and vegetables only have a very short harvesting window. Pick them too early and the quality is not there yet. Wait a few days too long, and they start getting soft, cracking, falling, or rotting. The government can take months to fix a policy, but a tomato does not have that kind of time.
It's about $250,000 to $300,000 worth of revenue.
Just left to rot.
Yeah, which is one thing, but it's also lost revenue for the workers that would have been able to pick them had they been here.
On the very first day of harvest season, nearly half of this guy's crew, about 120 people, did not show up. These were not just random seasonal workers. They were experienced workers, most of them of Mexican background, who had returned to the farm year after year and understood the rhythm of the harvest. The farm owner estimated that he might have to leave around 300 to 400 tons of fruit hanging on the trees. He and his wife even had to think about finding additional jobs to make up for the lost income. 300 or 400 tons of fruit is not just wasted food. It is the cost of seeds, water, fertilizer, fuel, insurance, loan interest, and months of work by the entire family, all rotting away with the produce. The thing is, ICE does not have to walk into every field to create that scene. News about arrests only has to spread fast enough, and fear will do the rest. Workers are afraid of being pulled over on their way to work. They are afraid of being detained while their papers are checked. They are afraid of leaving home in the morning and not being able to return to their children at the end of the day. That fear does not only affect undocumented workers. Even some people with legal papers no longer believe they are definitely safe when they leave home. For these MAGA farmers, the most bitter part is not that the land failed to produce enough food. It is that the land produced too much food at the exact moment when the policies they supported made the hands needed to harvest it disappear. And when this crop is left to rot, they do not just lose this year's income. They may also lose the money they need to pay their debts, repair machinery, buy seeds, and plant the next crop. But this is only the first part of the trap, because even the farmers who still manage to harvest their crops are discovering another truth. Sometimes the selling price is lower than the actual cost of producing that crop. Crop prices collapse production. Costs eat up all the profit. Let us say a MAGA farmer still managed to find enough workers for the harvest. The tomatoes have been packed into boxes, the corn is in the silo, and the rice is sitting in storage. At least the crop is no longer dying in the fields. But when it is time to sell, the second nightmare really begins. Many farmers supported tougher tariffs because they believed in a calculation that sounded perfectly reasonable. Foreign goods would become more expensive because of the tariffs. American products would get priority, and American producers would finally stop having to compete with cheap products from overseas. But that calculation leaves out one extremely important half of the equation. American agriculture does not just need to stop foreign goods from coming in. It also needs foreign buyers to keep buying American goods. Soybean, rice, corn, alfalfa, and honey producers do not operate on a large scale just to sell around their hometown. They need customers in China, Mexico, Canada, and many other markets. A warehouse full of crops cannot be paid for with patriotism. It needs a real buyer. And international buyers are not Washington's hostages. When the United States puts up tariff barriers, its trading partners can retaliate, cut their orders, or simply move their money to Brazil and other suppliers. They will choose places with more stable prices, more predictable policies, and less risk of getting dragged into another trade war. In my view, this is the biggest hole in the tariff promise made to MAGA farmers. They were told that foreign countries would suffer until they finally gave in. But buyers have a much simpler choice: take their money to a different field. The final result shows up directly in the price farmers receive. One tomato grower used to get about $16 per box. After the market shifted, the price dropped to only about $3 to $4, even though it needed to be around $10 to $11 just to break even. At that price, the farmer is not simply making less money. They are paying to pick, pack, sort, cool, and transport a product that is losing them money, while selling prices are being pushed down. Everything needed for production is getting more expensive machinery, parts, packaging, fuel, fertilizer, loan, interest, and labor. Tariffs do not just affect what farmers sell. They also affect what farmers have to buy to produce the next crop. We warned them. Cracking down on immigration would make the harvesting workforce disappear. Tariffs would bring retaliation. Foreign customers are under no obligation to keep buying American goods. And a policy that makes imports more expensive can also make the very things farmers need to buy more expensive. But what is happening in the fields is only the most visible part. Beneath the crops being left to rot and all those numbers are written in red are even more uncomfortable truths that can no longer be avoided. We are going to expose them right after this. More importantly, it is time to face the question, and mange vezden direktna migrant farmers once refused to ask, does Trump really represent them, or does he only need their votes? They are getting exactly what they voted for.
Wait, you mean to tell me Americans don't want to pick lettuce for $2 an hour? No. Now the farmers are crying because they can't find any workers. Ain't that something? After you pushed out all of the immigrant workers who actually did the job, now you're standing around wondering why Chet and Kaylee won't come pick your cabbage in 100-degree weather for $4.75 and a Capri Sun? Y'all really thought folks were going to jump at the chance to break their backs for pennies on a dollar?
Under videos of MAGA farmers begging for help, one sentence appears over and over again: you're getting exactly what you voted for. It sounds very cold. But honestly, I do not think thousands of people suddenly lost all compassion. I think they are tired of being asked to show sympathy only after the consequences come back around to the very people who once cheered them on. When immigrants were arrested, it was called law enforcement. When a family was separated, it was called a necessary price. When foreign goods were hit with tariffs, it was called making America strong again. But when workers stop coming to the farms, foreign customers stop buying American goods, and production bills shoot through the roof, the language immediately changes. Now it is a crisis. Now it is a betrayal. Now the entire country is being asked to understand their pain. And do you know why so many people have run out of patience? Because when someone else is hurting, it is called policy. When you are the one hurting, it suddenly becomes injustice. Many MAGA farmers heard Trump speak very clearly about deportations and tariffs. They did not just hear him. They supported him, voted for him, and believed that his tough approach would hurt exactly the people they wanted pushed out of the game. They thought immigrants would disappear, but their crops would still be harvested. They thought foreign countries would be punished, but would keep buying American farm products. They thought the federal government could be cut back, but the programs keeping their own farms alive would somehow be spared. I do not believe they thought those policies would hurt nobody. I think many of them simply believed they would not be the ones getting hurt. They may not have known how large the bill would be, but they voted for the bill to be sent. They just did not think it would be mailed to their own farm. I can still feel sorry for a family that is about to lose land passed down through generations. You can too. But compassion does not require us to lie about the cause. You cannot cheer when the hammer comes down on someone else, then call it injustice on the day it swings around and hits you. What many people are waiting for is not another video begging for help. They are waiting for one very simple statement: we were warned, we voted for it anyway, and we were wrong. But even that admission still does not reach the bigger truth. Because when immigrant labor disappeared, American agriculture revealed just how deeply it depends on the very people MAGA once said this country did not need. American agriculture cannot function without immigrant labor.
From what comes out of Trump's mouth, They're not supposed to be taking innocent people, good, hard-working, innocent people that we need.
For years, many farmers and MAGA voters kept chanting the same line like a slogan: immigrants are stealing American jobs. All right, now part of that workforce has disappeared, so what happens next? There is no wave of American workers flooding into the farms. There are no long lines of Americans standing outside the gates to take back the jobs that were supposedly stolen from them. The rows of trees still need people to pick them, the packing houses still need people to run them, and farm owners are still calling everywhere trying to find workers. And that is when you realize that immigrant workers bring more than just physical strength. Many crews return to the same farms season after season. They know which trees need to be harvested. First, which fruit is ripe enough, how to pick it without bruising the produce, and how fast they need to move to keep up with the packing line. They understand the rhythm of the farm in a way that a new hire cannot learn after just a few hours of training. When one person disappears, the farm loses a pair of hands. When the whole crew disappears, it also loses the memory of the harvest. But at this point, we have to face an even more uncomfortable truth. If this work is so important that being short on workers for just a few days can destroy an entire crop, why do the people doing it so often have so little power, so little security, and so little ability to negotiate? Part of the answer is that the system needs them, not only because they work hard, but also because they are vulnerable. Someone with few job options will have a harder time asking for higher pay. Someone worried about their papers will be less likely to speak up about bad conditions. Someone afraid of being deported will think very carefully before reporting an employer or walking away from a job. I think we need to say this plainly. Part of America's cheap food system survives because some people do not have enough power to demand that they be paid what they are really worth. Many farmers benefited from immigrant labor for years, then voted for policies that turned that same workforce into a target. Only when those workers stopped showing up did people finally recognize their value. You cannot depend on someone economically while denying their right to exist politically. You cannot need their hands during harvest season while voting to push their entire lives out of the country. Immigrants did not steal these jobs. They are filling a gap created by seasonal work, harsh conditions, unstable income, and a system that always wants cheaper food, but does not want to pay the people who produce it what they deserve. Who really comes first when policies are written? If Trump truly represents farmers, there is one very hard question to avoid. Why do they usually have to suffer the damage first and only receive relief money afterward? Customers disappear, costs go up, profits vanish, loans come due. Only when the farm is almost unable to stay on its feet does Washington show up with a check. I do not call that power. That is just getting compensated, after the important decisions have already been made with almost no control over them. Farmers make a very good political image. Tractors, fields, families that have farmed for generations, and red hats create the perfect story about real America. Trump can mention them in speeches, praise their patriotism, and promise to protect American products. But being mentioned does not mean being put first. When the cameras are off and decisions are made about tariffs, immigration, or relief, the voice of a family farm can hardly compete with major businesses that have money, lawyers, experts, and direct access to the people writing policy. The same policy might only create one bad quarter for a major company, but it can end 3 generations of land ownership for a family. Maybe Trump really does want to be seen as the protector of farmers. But results still matter more than the image. Farmers get promises before the election, suffer the damage afterward, and then receive relief once the crisis has already begun. And if this continues, the consequences will not stop with the people wearing MAGA hats. Food prices, local jobs, tax dollars, and land ownership will pull down all of us into it. When farmers collapse the whole country, it pays the price. Think back to the last time you went to the grocery store. With the same amount of money as before, were you able to bring home the same amount of food? How much of your bill now goes toward a bag of vegetables, a few cuts of meat, eggs, milk, and fruit? Maybe you voted for Trump and are starting to regret it. Or maybe you never believed him and are watching MAGA farmers struggle while thinking we warned you. I understand that feeling. But take another look at your shopping cart. It is not cheaper just because you voted the right way. You may not have created this crisis. That does not mean you are exempt from paying for it. When farms do not have enough workers, part of the crop never makes it to market. When losses continue, farmers cut back the amount of land they plant, reduce investment, or skip the next season completely. If many farms do the same thing, grocery stores have to find supplies from farther away and pay more for transportation, storage, and middlemen. Those costs do not simply disappear. Some of them will eventually show up on your bill. One farm shutting down will not raise food prices nationwide. But when the same pressure is repeated across thousands of farms, the food supply comes under strain. And if the crisis continues, vegetables, meat, fruit, and other essentials could absolutely become even more expensive. Now take a look at your income. Is your pay rising as fast as rent, insurance, and food? If the answer is no, even a small increase can force you to change the way you eat. You used to buy 2 packages of meat, but now you buy only 1. Fresh fruit becomes something you have to think twice about. A nutritious meal gets replaced by something cheaper that keeps you full longer. When wages stay flat and food gets more expensive, you no longer shop based on what you like. You shop based on what you can afford. I do not think a child should have to eat worse just so adults can understand the consequences of a vote. But that is exactly the danger here. Political consequences do not only come for the people who voted for Trump. They spread to workers, retirees, low-income families, and even farmers who opposed him from the beginning. You may also have to pay a second time. The government may use tax dollars to rescue farms that are losing money, once at the checkout counter, then again through the public budget. You can win the argument and say, "I warned you," but that victory will not help you pay your grocery bill. And if a family still cannot hold on to the farm, that land will not disappear. It will be sold. The next question is, who has enough money to buy it when the farmer is desperate? The crisis could push farmland into corporate hands. When a farming family can no longer make its loan payments, their land does not disappear. It gets sold, leased out for the long term, or transferred to another operator. And the important question is, while the farmer is short on money who has enough money to buy it, I do not want to turn every land deal into a conspiracy. Not every farm that gets sold immediately ends up in corporate hands. But let us not pretend that the seller and the buyer always enter the negotiation with equal power. A family that owes the bank may need money right away. They do not have enough time to wait for a better price. They also cannot hold on to the land for a few more years just to wait for the market to recover. Meanwhile, a large farm, an agricultural corporation, about a land holding company or an investment fund can borrow money, wait and buy several properties at the same time. For the seller, this is a moment when they're trying to survive. For a buyer with cash available, it may be an opportunity to expand. When one side needs money to stay alive and the other side has enough money to wait, that is not an equal negotiation. The new buyer will not necessarily leave the land unused. They may continue farming, hire workers, and maintain production. But the issue is not only whether the land is still being farmed. The issue is who owns it, who decides how it is used, and who keeps the final profit. If ownership becomes more concentrated, young people will have a harder time buying land to get started. Small farms will lose even more bargaining power. Decisions about crops, contracts, and land use may be made far away from the community. And what is even harder to understand is that even after losing workers, losing profits, or facing the possibility of losing their land, many MAGA farmers may still vote for Trump again. That is because their vote was never just an economic calculation. They may still vote for Trump again. After all this damage, it is easy to assume that MAGA farmers will definitely change their vote. Losing workers, losing markets, seeing profits fall, and even facing the possibility of losing their land would seem like enough to make someone turn away from Trump. But people do not vote based only on the balance in their bank account at the end of the month. For many people, politics is also tied to family, community, religion, guns, the border, and the way they picture America. A farmer may be unhappy with tariffs or the way immigration policies are being carried out, but still believe that Trump is closer to their values than the other choice. In my view, we often overestimate the ability of economic hardship to automatically change someone's political beliefs. Changing your vote can also mean going against friends, relatives, or a community you have been part of for years. That is why change often happens more slowly than disappointment. Some farmers may truly change their minds. Some will stick with the same choice. Many probably have not decided yet. Regretting one policy does not necessarily lead someone to change their entire political choice. That is why the biggest mistake right now would be to sit around waiting for the crisis to get worse in the hope that it will make a community change its vote. Meanwhile, farms keep shutting down workers, keep losing their jobs, and consumers keep paying more. The solution cannot depend on who they vote for next time. It has to protect workers, keep farms alive, and reduce the damage to consumers right now. Do not wait for them to change their vote. Save the farms right now. I do not want to sit back and watch crops and die in the fields just to wait for someone to admit they were wrong. Politics can wait. Food cannot. The first step is keeping the workforce in place. America needs a legal, clear, and stable path for seasonal agricultural workers. Applications need to be processed before harvest begins. Farm owners need to know exactly how many workers are coming. Workers also need to know they can go to work without living in fear of being suddenly arrested. Protecting the border does not mean paralyzing the farms that produce food for the entire country. You cannot drive away the people who harvest the crops and then ask farmers to somehow find a miracle to replace them. But keeping workers is not enough. The people doing this exhausting work need a living wage, safe housing, transportation, and the right to report violations without fear of retaliation. I do not accept cheap food built on workers' fear, but we also cannot dump the entire cost onto a family farm that is being squeezed by grocery chains, distributors, and agricultural suppliers. In the immediate future, whatever can still be saved needs to be saved. Farms can share work crews, machinery, cold storage, and transportation. Direct sales pick-your-own programs, food banks, and community support can reduce some of the damage. They cannot replace professional workers, but they are still better than standing there and watching everything rot. Over the long term, trade policy needs to be stable. Relief needs to put family farms first. The power of fertilizer seed processing and distribution companies also needs to be kept under control. MAGA farmers may have helped create this crisis, but keeping workers, keeping farms alive, and keeping food affordable is not a reward for them. It is how all of us protect ourselves. Some promises sound great and powerful, but reality has never been as simple as a slogan. The votes and dreams of MAGA farmers are a bitter example. That nightmare has become real, and it does not belong only to them. When farms shut down and supplies shrink and food prices continue to rise sharply, the final bill comes to all of us. Whether you voted for Trump, opposed him, or did not vote at all, you still have to buy food for your family. Share your thoughts in the comments. Right now, more than ever, we need to listen to one another, even when we disagree. And subscribe to the channel. This is where we can look the truth straight in the face and say the things other people do not want to say.